All right, I'm here with Denver Riggleman. Everybody, welcome to the Tennessee Brando show. This is going to be a blast. Me and Denver's been sitting here for 10 minutes before showtime, just having a hell of a conversation. So we've already felt like the ball is rolling. So we're glad that you're here with us on this Friday. Hope everyone's had a good week. It's been a busy week, crazy week. A whole lot of stuff's happened. There's so much to talk about. Denver, thank you so much, man, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor. It's an honor, man.
I'm really looking forward to it. We had the Hunter Biden verdict, and I would definitely love to pick your brain about that one because that's something that there was big news, and it was interesting to see how both sides of the aisle reacted to that. What was your thoughts when you heard that verdict come down?
Well, Brandon, I know Hunter personally. When after the January 6th committee, I was a Republican congressman, and after the January 6th committee, I had this bizarre phone call, and it was the attorneys for Hunter Biden. They actually flew a private plane out to the D.C. area where I'm at, and they got with me. And they said, "Hey, we saw you on 60 Minutes. We know that you're an honorable guy. We also know that you're a data expert. You have a team of data experts. Would you be willing to look at all the data that supposedly came from Hunter Biden's laptop that's actually on 4chan and all these, hidden websites, Brandon, and also the Marco Polo report and all that?" So we did all that, and we found out that there's no forensic chain of custody. There's bizarre stuff in the data. There's a lot of bad stuff that's out there. And we also found that the sourcing came from Rudy Giuliani and Steve Bannon, just like the J6 stuff. And as you know, I was the senior technical advisor on the J6 committee. So we did a lot of the stuff on the computer side, laptop, and forensics. But what I didn't do was really support the legal cases, right? So when it came to the gun case itself, the reason I think that Hunter was so adamant about the not guilty verdict is he's been clean for so long. And he said, "I want to fight, right? This is ridiculous." I honestly thought he'd be guilty of one of three or two or three charges, Brandon. When I saw he's guilty of all three, I think he's going to get some jail time, and I think when I look at it, what I wondered, Brandon, is why there wasn't a lot of Second Amendment activists outside the courthouse, right, marching around. And,
Yeah.
and I also think that, I think they're going to go to appeal. We know there's some issues with the case and stuff on data. And, I know that. I know the team really well. But Hunter seems to be in really good spirits, Brandon. And I think he's almost relieved it's over with. And it's really interesting the way that he took it like a man rather than how Donald Trump took it. I think the thing is how he took it, how his family supported him, but also the simple fact that I think the case was a bit frivolous. I think, by the letter of the law, found guilty. That's what we do in America is we respect the law. But you can have a frivolous case with a proper outcome. I think that's how I look at it. And I actually think that's how the Biden family looks at it too.
Yeah, and I was really glad to see his reaction versus Trump's reaction. I think it really, when people says to me both sides are the same, that's going to be one of the things I'll point to and say no, we're not. Because he could have. There's, like you said too, there's so many people in my part of the world, man, that are Second Amendment enthusiasts all the way, and they were. I mean, if you said to them, "Hey, your buddy here can't own a gun for this reason," well, no, they always go back to "shall not be infringed." They love to go to that one part. And so it's interesting now that they're cheering him on that he's been found guilty, that they're happy about that. When I'm not passing judgment on people, man, if you started going around in my part of the world and picking apart everyone who checked that box on a gun form, no one would own a gun.
Let me tell you, man. Let me tell you, and I think it's even more now, right? Because there's so many people now who aren't afraid to, I was only one, by the way, I was only one of three when I was a Republican, but I don't know if everybody knows my story of why I'm not anymore. But I
Yeah.
was one of the only three Republicans to vote to legalize marijuana. And I remember, after the vote, it was like, oh my God, a Republican voted yes to legalize marijuana. I'm like, hey, I live in rural Virginia.
Yeah.
I live in rural Virginia, and I own distilleries. I already make whiskey, man. So I'm not gonna, marijuana is certainly not worse than alcohol. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, to me, it's a bit ridiculous, right? But how many people smoking,
Yeah.
marijuana, which was a Schedule
Yeah.
A, right, at that time, that are filling out gun forms? There's, oh, God, dude,
Oh,
thousands and thousands.
absolutely. That's something too. I'm from Tennessee, and I'm actually right on the line of Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. So I can be in Virginia in like 5 minutes. I can be in Kentucky in like 10 minutes. I'm right here. So all three states kind of feels like home. And
Beautiful.
it's so funny to me though how that people, in my part of the world who are very for marijuana, have been against it. It's been very weird to see them be against it being legal. I don't think they truly are. It's just that they kind of are by default because of their political affiliations, and it's really weird to me.
Well, with Hunter now, he's been clean for, gosh, well over 5 years. And,
Yeah.
he has a new family, a new son, who's named Bowie, after his brother Bo, who died of brain cancers, and, I think it's a shame that somebody's worked so hard to get clean, has a Trump appointed attorney, Trump appointed judge that makes sure that the jury instructions are not that they can be proven at that specific moment that he was high, but that there's I guess, a trend of him doing that. And I do think, the appeal will work out, but I just don't want people to be surprised if he gets jail time, Brandon. And I think he will accept it as the person that he is.
And that's one question I did have. How could they prove that he was actually high when he filled out that form?
Can
I mean,
I mean, he's he's not drug tested at the time, but
yeah,
that's why they brought on his family. That's why they brought everybody. That's why by the way, they put the laptop in evidence. And by the way, there was 3 laptops. One day, Brandon, we have to talk about the whole thing because I think people's like, oh, it is all bullshit, right? But they only used a few emails from the total mass of data that came from the specific laptop, not the data that's said to be from the laptop. And
mhm.
I think they just wanted to put it in there to get news that the laptop is real, but nobody's went against the laptop, right? But I think when you're looking at the actual mass of evidence and with the jury instructions, and I think people should really look at this, is that he had sort of self-professed that he was going through recovery, that he had had some relapses, and it was around that time. And based on the jury instructions from the judge, if they could prove that it was around that time that he had these issues through that time period, that they could actually find him guilty. And with those jury instructions, the jury did indeed find him guilty.
Yeah, because it is funny to me because, like you said, you would if you were being drug tested, then you couldn't lie. You know what I mean? There would be no way if you were being drug tested in that moment. But if you're just filling out that form and it comes to, are you currently using drugs at the particular time? There's a lot of ways you could look at that.
There is, and I think that's why you're going to see a really aggressive appeal from Abby Lowell. I know the attorney, but again, what's amazing is how the sane and the rational reacted to the Hunter Biden verdict rather
Mhm.
than the people that were literally spreading tears all over their face and bawling because President Trump got convicted.
Yeah.
Really, the snowflakes are really on the far right. They're certainly not on the left or in the center.
They absolutely are, man. And I get that so much because I had so many people like, what do you think about Hunter Biden now? And I'm like, well, I mean, he's been found guilty and he respects the decision. We do, it's like we're just the rule of law people. They say they are, but in my mind, I'm like, it's not the flex you think it is when you come at us and say, look, we got him. It's like, okay. Like, I mean, they're completely on the other side of the fence and on everything. And if as long as it's they're all for back the blue until the blue comes after their guy. And
That,
then, yeah,
I think that's called hypocrisy in it, man. And the other thing too, a little bit, just like a little bit of hypocrisy. The other thing too, they try to, even the press tries to conflate the Trump trial and the Hunter Biden trial. And I think the issue that I tell people is like, listen, Hunter Biden never ran for office. He isn't running for office. The former president was a president of the United States, is running for president. You can't conflate the trials. You can't conflate what they did, right? It's just impossible to do so. And I think the reason, I mean, I got attacked so much. I think I have I got a tweet out there. I think it has 54,000 likes on Hunter, where I
mhm,
said I thought it was sad that he was convicted, but he respects the rule of law and things of that nature.
yeah,
There was already disinformation and conspiracy theorists that were already attacking me, Brandon. As soon as I put that out, they already had the message, because now what are they going to do? They have to have another conspiracy theory, which is now that Hunter Biden actually was given up by his dad
yeah,
for the guilty verdicts in order to protect the tens of millions of dollars and other financial crimes they were doing. So he sacrificed his son in order to actually protect the larger crimes. It's so ludicrous. But
yeah.
again, conspiracy theorists aren't worried about consistency. It's inconsistency and idiocy that really drives them. So it's just crazy out there.
Yeah, it really is. And I was kind of surprised and not surprised at them when they said that. It was one of those things where I kind of face palmed and went, I should have thought of that. Because sometimes you can almost predict what a conspiracy theorist is going to say because they've like you said, they've always got an out. And my question for you would be how are we going to combat conspiracy theories going forward when they seem to always have a scapegoat? They've always got themselves a built-in out because they're always in a fantasy world. how do we as reasonable people combat? How do we combat that?
No, this is going to be a little bit sensitive, I think. And
Yeah,
I was raised very religious, and Brandon, I know how religious you are.
yeah,
If people believe they got a direct line to the supernatural,
mhm,
there are some who, if they believe they have that direct line, seem to be a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more susceptible to
yeah,
insanity and crazy. So, for instance, if I go to somebody and say, "Hey, do you believe that aliens have there's alien body parts being stored by the United States Air Force in bins outside of Area 51?" Like, yeah, 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 yeah. Tho-
yeah,
Those same people are going to be 9/11 truthers.
yeah,
Those same people are going to believe that the election was stolen.
yeah,
Those same people are going to be susceptible to QAnon. So when you're out there with these types of individuals, if you have a friend who thinks that he was abducted by Bigfoot or she was abducted by Bigfoot, more than likely they probably believe that there's alien abductions. And more than likely they probably believe that there's some deep state globalist conspiracy theory of a bunch of Democrats or globalists who like to harvest children for adrenochrome, which is really the fountain of life. And they molest the children in order to get their adrenaline levels up. Then they suck the blood out of them. They could believe that too. So really, once you're susceptible to one conspiracy theory or you believe one fantasy, it's very easy to fall down that rabbit hole. The best example is Jenny Thomas. She was actually part of a cult, pretty much. She was part of a conspiratorial cult when she was younger. She tries to get out of it, which was Life Spring, which is in my book, The Breach. Whatever side that's on, there it is.
yeah,
But yeah, so that's the issue that you have. Then she fell into the QAnon cult, as everybody knows, and now she's so super religious. She also believes she pretty much has a direct line to Jesus, and I think
yeah.
that's the issue that you have is if people have done it once, they're susceptible to others.
Yeah, I was brought up in church, but I'm pretty much agnostic these days. But when I was growing up in church, I grew up in a home where my mother was Pentecostal, my dad was Southern Baptist, and on my mom's side of the family was more Democrats, and on my dad's side was more Republican. So I was in the middle, asking a bunch of questions because here was people I loved and grew up with that had different opinions, and I'm in the middle asking a bunch of questions. And so I think, like you said, if you're taught at an early age to believe in things and always have a way to explain it. I remember, I actually got removed from Sunday school class, no joke, for asking too many questions. The teacher said that I was confusing the kids because he said one day, I never will forget this. This was my question. I thought it was fair, but he said the only way to get to heaven is through Jesus Christ. You have to be saved to get to heaven. So I just raised my hand. And I was like, well, what about all the people that came before him? He's like, well, I'm sure God found a way for him. I'm like, well, what about all the Native Americans over here that were over here? That he's like, well, I'm sure he talked to them too. I was like, but America wasn't discovered yet. And I just keep going back and forth. But there was a story. There was like you said, there was a layer. They had an answer for everything I said, and there was no actual proof or facts or evidence for none of it. But they had a way to keep saying it. And it's like, I believe if you grow up in that kind of environment, then it does get easy to fall into conspiracy theories and always have another layer to add to it.
Now, I own distilleries and make whiskey, so Mormonism didn't really take, but I was raised Mormon. I was
Oh,
actually a Mormon elder. And yeah, and so the Mormon religion, LDS religion really came about in the early 1830s, very new religion, and had a prophet, Joseph Smith. So how the Mormons get around it, I don't know if you know this, you can actually baptize the dead through proxy. So what they say is since Jesus Christ came, he actually came to the United States and proselytized to the Native Americans when they were here. That's really one of the Mormon belief systems. But the reason that it all works, Brandon, is because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can actually baptize the dead. They can actually take the names and the rolls of names. Like me, I would go to the temple and baptize, 100 people that had died in the 1800s, and that allows them to reach the highest levels of heaven. So you're right. There's always a way to explain it based on how the belief system is structured. And when you start breaking down that belief system and the structure of that belief system, instead of the person, Brandon, actually saying, "Oh my gosh, you know what? You're right," they actually get angry because you're actually sort of hitting them in the throat. You're hitting them in the belief fields, right?
yeah,
It's uppercut, roundhouse, right? You're saying, "Hey," even if you're trying to do it in a very sweet way or a very compassionate way, what I call compassionate confrontation.
yeah,
So the thing that I think, and to get back to your original question, is you got to go after the purveyors of the grift. You have to actually drag the vampires into the sunlight and
mhm,
show how they're taking advantage of people. I think that's the only way to get to people is to actually attack the individuals who are trying to pull one over on them.
That's a great point. I'm glad you put it that way, because I think we do need to put more focus on the people that are actually, starting this and stirring the pot, because it's such. I don't think conspiracy theories should have ever become a brand. You know what I mean? But it's like I hear people all the time now saying stuff like, I get into conspiracy theories, like they're all the same, like these random events that happened all over the country was all orchestrated by this one mastermind, and I still don't know exactly who they are. They keep saying they did it, they're coming for us, and I'm always like, who is this mysterious they? But it's like, I just feel like that when they fall down that rabbit hole and they're believing one and then they're believing another, I'm like, how do those two events really have anything to do with each other? And yet they'll find a way to marry the two.
They really do. And God, I hate to do this. It's so incredible, right? Look at your followers, how many people you have. I started this Coalition of the Sane podcast on our same network here,
Yeah.
and that podcast was because of that. Is how do you get the rational and the sane? And I got to tell you, you seem incredibly sane to me, by the way.
Well,
how do we get all these? How do we get all these?
It says that.
And I got a feeling some of the people listening to us are like, what? I'm pretty sane,
Yeah.
So, but listening, what you're trying to do is incredible on your show. What I'm trying to do is like, hey, bring on people like, we have the Big Midas show, but then I have a smaller one where I do the COTS takes instead of hot takes, right? The Coalition of Sane takes.
Yeah.
But I think what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do is we're trying to introduce common sense and sort of a reality basis to what's going on out there. And they can say, well, Brandon, you do music, you try to make things entertaining. Well, you sort of got to grab people's attention too, to try to drag them into that sanity sort of level. And I think that's what's so cool about what you're doing too, is you're, listen, I'm from rural, I'm in rural Virginia. You're in Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's not like me and you're in the middle of the hubs. Of course I was in DC and we've been into big places, but how do you reach people who have the limited ability to know all the people who are trying to take advantage of them? It's not that they're dumb, right?
Yeah.
It's that most of them just don't understand that a lot of people are out there trying to take advantage of them. And I think what you're trying to do and what I'm trying to do is let's stop these assholes, right? And let's see if we can't, give them a throat punch of our own,
Yeah, I believe it was the comedian Harold Ramis that said this one time. He said the only thing funnier than watching a man go crazy is watching a man watch a man go crazy. Because he was talking about the movie Stripes with Bill Murray, where he sat there and he just kind of reacted to Bill Murray. Well, I kind of feel sometimes like that's what I'm doing. I feel like I'm kind of reacting to the reactions around me. Like I'm kind of the man watching the man go crazy. And I'm like trying to just talk and be like, hey, have you ever thought about it this way? That's really in my mind. When I'm talking in my videos, that's kind of the approach I'm trying to take, is like, hey guys, wait, did you ever think about it this way? Maybe they're using a lot of the way we were brought up against us. I really feel like that's what happened is, people in our part of the world are brought up to believe in God. They are brought up to fish and hunt with their grandpas and have guns and shoot guns. And then all of a sudden, and they had family members who were veterans and they're proud to be Americans and all this kind of thing. And then they grow up and they get told, hey, there's this party of evil people over here that's coming for your gun and coming for your God and coming for your flag. And, I think that's kind of what helped to kind of sow that seed. And I'm just trying to say, hey, did you ever stop to think maybe they're trying to play our culture against us, if that makes sense?
It makes complete sense. And by the way, it's not like just one side or the other. It's just a big mass of like-minded people. We're not the Borg. We're not just this massive leviathan of like-minded zombies, which is now, I would say, a significant portion of the far right. I mean, if you're still supporting Trump after they grab him by the, rhymes with wussy and, the other thing, the other things that he's done, I don't know how to pull you out of that flat spin. I don't know, how do we make you eject out of the jet when you're in that flat spin about to crash? They want to crash. And sometimes you got to let some of these people crash. Gosh, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I think maybe only 3 to 5% of folks we can really pull out of that right now. Might be enough, but I think that's about it.
Yeah, and I saw something on the internet this week that kind of stuck out to me. I was just scrolling social media, and a person I follow, who I know, I don't want to name their name, but I definitely want to bring this up because it's a good point. I'll see them randomly share memes about, and then usually when they share political memes, they're for Trump, and they would post stuff like, I don't care about 34 felons when gas is $5, that kind of stuff, And Jesus was convicted too, those kind of memes.
Oh, let me tell you, I've heard that everywhere. It's great. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the same exact person though shared that we should all be reading Project 2025. It should scare us to death. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, do you realize that the people you've been supporting here are the ones that are trying to implement that? I wonder how many people are truly uneducated about it. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, but it's just like, how many people are out there just mad at things because someone told them to be mad at it, rather than they actually got in there like you've done and studied it and understood where this stuff come from? Because, you were, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you left the Republican Party. Were you a lifelong Republican?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, my parents, if you said that, um, if you said you were going to vote for a Democrat, you are not invited to the family reunion. That ship has sailed, right? No Kool-Aid, right? No barbecue from Grandpa. You ain't
Yeah.
getting shit, so that's it. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't know there was another way.
Yeah.
I, I didn't know there was another way. And even now, am I a Democrat? I'm getting to the point I don't even want to identify with a tribe. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm getting really to the point. I'm like, I don't, because I've been asked to run for Congress again. I've been asked to run for things, just crazy things.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you have to run as a D. I got asked to run for Virginia governor by Democrats and by Republicans, and both of them. I said, listen, I'm just not comfortable. The only letter I want behind my name right now is American. Right?
Yeah.
I'm good with being a USA guy. I don't know. If I were to run again, though, I do think, and I'm not trying to make people happy here,
Yeah.
I do think the Democratic Party does have a big enough tent for people like me.
Yeah.
Somebody who was a Republican who officiated a same-sex wedding and went against QAnon first. That's me. I don't think
Yeah.
the Republican Party is. So, so what I think if I had to pick a party, I'd probably try to run independent if I could. That's very difficult. I
Yeah.
do think the Democratic Party is big enough for somebody like me. Who knows? But I think that's the case.
That's one of the arguments. That's one of the arguments that I make too. And I can totally understand not wanting to be affiliated with a party and not wanting to be part of a tribe. I can totally understand that. But I've often said that I feel like that the Democratic Party, it's a much broader umbrella, and there's a lot of different ideas. Because I play in a band with 3 other musicians, and they're all like-minded people. They all vote Democrat, but if we all sit down and start talking, we're going to have 3 completely different opinions, and we're going to have 3 completely different. It's not like we're all not going to be saying the same exact thing. We'll get into arguments at times over certain parts of it, and there's some that's further left than I would consider myself. So I do think you're right in the sense that there's probably more room for you there, at least.
Yeah, and I
But
love what you
I
just.
totally understand what you're saying though about the not wanting to be affiliated. I totally get that.
Well, what you just said, and I'm pretty sure you said it in a nuanced way, and it was really good. And I hope people knew what you just said. I think the difference is the diversity of opinion in the Democratic Party makes it strong, but it also what makes it weak.
Exactly.
Um, because listen, there's something about the GOP and their shut up and color mentality with Trump, and with sort of the MAGA message now, that I just don't think Democrats or independents or even some center right Republicans can actually get their arms around. And when you were talking about your bandmates, voting Democratic, but that you had such diversity of opinion, what a strength. But you
Yeah.
know what? That diversity of opinion doesn't allow a lot of the Democrats and even independents to actually rally against this specific cudgel, this big old hammer, this million-pound shit hammer of crazy,
Yeah.
right? That's, by the way, I just took a Hunter Thompson thing there with a million-pound shit hammer. Sorry about that, Brandon. But this million-pound shit hammer of crazy, they're
Yeah.
taking that and they're able to really attack with a unified message. And while the Democrats think it's the Marcus of Queensberry rules, right?
Yeah.
Republicans bringing a machete into the committee meeting.
Exactly.
That's the difference, as far as I know at this point.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because I've had that conversation with my bandmates. I'm like, this it's our strength, but it's also our weakness, because all of a sudden you got someone going, well, I'm not coming, I'm not showing up, and it's like I get it, but we've got to get together on something. And they're say what you will about the MAGA Republicans, they're united. I mean, they're together.
United.
We saw Trump meet.
Well.
Yeah, we saw Trump meet with him. We saw people like Mitch McConnell just roll over and get right back behind him. So
They will show their belly quicker than anybody. It's like a bunch of beta boys out there, right? I call them beta boys and googly girls, right? They're out there. They'll roll over and show their belly anytime. You also said something else. Damn it, that was good. Because the other thing too is they have a dedicated plan right now. If you're looking at MAG on the far right, and what you already mentioned was Project 2025.
yeah,
It's 880 pages or so.
yeah,
So I had my Yeah, I had a team built me an AI instantiation, a ChatGPT instantiation for Project 25 so you can search on it.
Yeah,
And that's what I actually use, right, to try to summarize the entire 900-page package using AI. People need to be very familiar with Project 2025. I know that's you. You mentioned that at the beginning. I think
yeah,
if you want to know the plan and what you need to prepare for, if you're a Democrat, Independent, center right, Republican, you need to read Project 2025 and you need to know it because that's how they're going to come at you.
yeah. And where would you advise people? Because I have a lot of people ask me where the best way to find it is, and I mean I simply done a Google search, but is there an easier way to find it, folks?
There's really not. I mean, you can go if you look at. There's a Project 2025 website, and I'm trying to remember what it is, but you need to go take a look at it because really, if you're looking at the Federal Society, the Heritage Foundation, do you know one of the authors on there like Mike Flynn, Peter Navarro? I mean, the people that actually sniff glue for a living are actually who wrote this. But you
Yeah,
also have some very smart legal minds that
yeah,
actually wrapped a lot of legal wrappers around it. But people need to go look it up. They need to download it. I know it's a lot of pages. I know it's huge but
yeah,
hell, even if you got to pay some money to actually order a Project 2025 book or you need to print it out, something like that, you need to get a hold of it. But really, the best way is to Google it. There is a Project 2025 website. I wish I could remember what it was, Brandon. I don't know if it's still
cool.
active, but it's out there and people need to go right now. You need to know what's happening because it's already June and the election is just a few months away.
Yeah, I mean we're close, man. I mean we're really close to the election, and I'm just worried that there's people that are sitting back on the fence, still undecided, not really knowing which way to go. And I mean, I personally don't know how they could be at this point in the game, but there are those people, and that's who I feel like people like us are trying to reach. Like, hey, you need to be paying attention to these things before it's too late. Because I think a lot of the people I've had arguments with about things are upset with Joe Biden about. I'm like, you might be upset with Joe Biden about that now, but I really feel like that if we vote for Joe Biden, we're going to get a chance to vote again. That's just how I feel about it. And I feel like with Trump, we
Excellent
might
point.
not. I feel,
That's
I
an
feel like
excellent
I feel like
point.
with Trump, we might not. So it's just like that's
You
why.
know, and I'm sorry about my voice. I was at a war game all day, so 8 hours of talking. But I think your point is well taken, and I hope
Mhm.
that the people are really paying attention to what you just said. Is that listen? You might be like, I don't like Biden's policy on this, Biden's policy on that, but I don't remember. And tell me if I'm wrong, Brandon. If I missed it, let me know. I don't remember Joe Biden saying he wants to be a dictator or a
Yeah.
retribution against his enemies or jailing his enemies. That's a scary road to go down. And they're
Yeah.
already preparing for their first day in office if they were to win on January 20th, 2025. If you don't think they already have a plan of attack and a plan of action with executive orders and things of that nature, you need to be looking in your rear view
Yeah.
because they're coming. And so be ready. But the only way to be ready, and it's an intelligence thing, is you need to prepare the battle space and you need to
Yeah.
know how they're going to come at you. And again, you said it, it's Project 2025, but you also need to listen to the people around Trump and what Trump's saying. And if they're saying it, you need to believe them.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that out, man, because more people definitely needs to be, learning about it and getting prepared. Like you said, one thing I definitely wanted to talk to you about though was your time on the January 6th committee because I dove in and watched some of your videos on that, and I was like, holy crap, this guy was right there on the front line, and I think you definitely saw a whole lot of things that guys like me that was over here just reacting to the reactions. I know I missed a lot of it, and so how did that all come to be, man? How did you wind up in that boat?
Dear Lord, being a Republican congressman, first of all, and then getting sort of kicked out with the things that happened to me. I got close to, Adam Kinzinger's on the board of my new company. I'm really close to Adam and really good friends. And, I don't know if people remember Anthony Gonzalez, who got all the death threats, who played for the Colts, an incredible NFL football player who was also in Congress. He had all these sort of like-minded, sort of rational Republicans. There's really none left. There might be a couple, maybe Dave Joyce and Don Bacon, and maybe Patrick McHenry. Really the only three real Republicans, I think, that are sort of straddling the sanity line and good guys. They're just trying to survive in there. Um, but for me, I got a call from Liz the night of January 6th, and she's like, "Denver, help us." And so for the first impeachment, we actually created a 10-page document using with a data company that I had or that I knew about who's there. We identified 7 white nationalist groups. So when the committee time came around, I got a phone call like, Denver, you did 20 years of counterterrorism. You're an NSA, Air Force, data analytics. You went after terrorists your whole life. Would you please come in and help us, build this technical team? We don't even know what to do. So when it comes to identity resolution, we're the ones who found the Mark Meadows text, the Jenny Thomas text, it was me. We're the ones who did all the call detail records, looked at all the phone records. We're the ones who tracked Tario and Rhodes. We're the ones who saw the calls with the White House that happened with actually people on the ground during that day. And a lot of that sort of disappeared. People have forgotten about all this. So that's how I got involved, was really not because of Congress. Yeah, it helps me. It gives me some juice. But really it was my background in intelligence work when I was Air Force and then NSA and then the Office of Secretary of Defense. That's really what gave me my juice. That's how I got involved. And, of course, I wrote the book and then I pissed off the left and the right, because data is data, right? Ones and zeros make the best witness. But it really, again, it seemed like even though I pissed off, some of my Dem friends with the way I looked at the security issue that day, they're like, well, Dan, you sort of told the truth, man. Damn.
Yeah.
What the Republicans is, you went against our orange-haired God and we want to hurt you. So that was the difference. That was the difference, man. And again, it comes back to, I think there's a lot of people very smart, from center left to left, that really can look at things in a nuanced way. And really the center right, the 30% of Republicans who aren't for Trump. And that's all there is, by the way, maybe 25. And a lot of those will come home, as you know, Brandon. They will come home and vote for the Republican if it's Trump.
Yeah.
So I would say 10 to 15% maybe of the Republican side that gets into the middle right, won't vote for Trump. So you have this group that is a little bit more nuanced, but I don't think people realize just how dedicated the Trump folks are. And when I looked at the J6 stuff, when I looked at the 2,319 text messages, the QAnon and conspiratorial stuff went all the way up to the president. So people need to realize too, these conspiracy theories, they've inundated the entire GOP. And if you think that they don't, just look at the polling and that over 70% still believe the election was stolen. It's that simple. So that's what you're dealing with, are people who actually value fantasy over facts. And it's a very difficult thing to argue with those type of people.
Yeah, and one thing that they love, one thing they love to paint, and I've heard so many people say, is that it was a peaceful protest. Nothing went wrong, and there's some that will say one thing I've noticed, they'll say that they let them come in, they just let them walk right through. And when I was watching one of your videos, you talked about the different text messages that was being sent out on that day. So to everyone that says they weren't there, they were just there to peacefully protest, that, you saw the messages, you saw what they were talking about at that point.
If Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity are telling the president to stand down,
yeah,
shit's gone sideways.
Yeah.
So, and his own son,
yeah,
Don Jr., right? So come on. It's bull. Other congressional representatives, right, were like, oh my God, their minds were exploding. A lot of people, Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? So her first text to Meadows was out of pure terror. Terror. People don't realize, right, that these people are actors. Marjorie Taylor Greene is an ignoramus, and she's an actress. I mean, she's dumb as a box of hammers, but she does know how to manipulate the stupid. And I think that's
that's true. It's so true.
So I mean, so that's the issue. But I saw their fear. And so now they're trying to rewrite history, and people need to remember the text messages. People need to remember how people really acted. And it's absolute unadulterated bullshit for people to say it was a peaceful thing that just a few people got out of hand. Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, other white nationalist groups, all of them were planning this for a long time. And a lot of the rally individuals, a lot of the alternate elector peoples were actually coordinating directly with White House staff. So let's just be honest here. Don't be assholes, right? This was a coup-like attempt, and let's just be honest on how we define it.
Yeah, it's been so interesting to me too, though, to watch them play both sides of the fence on this, because sometimes they'll say that it wasn't them, they didn't do anything wrong, they were all being peaceful, it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa just put there to disrupt and make them look bad. But if you kind of corner them on that, they'll get angry and come back at you with, well, we had every right to stand up to a tyrannical government. So it's like a lot of times I've seen them play both sides of the fence on that one. And I don't know how that works, but they managed to pull it off.
Well, the person who really started it was Matt Gaetz. I mean, it started with Jason Miller thinking about how they could actually flip this to blame Antifa. So around 3:40 to 3:45 p.m. on January 6th, Jason Miller's saying, hey, we need to blame this on Antifa. I think it was only 7 or 8 minutes later that Marjorie Taylor Greene texted Mark Meadows about Antifa. And it was Matt Gaetz who put out that there was a facial recognition company who actually identified Antifa in the crowd, which turned out to be, well, I know this is going to surprise you, but a lie. So that whole thing started to bloom that way. But again, a lot of these patriots took credit and said, there's no damn way it was Antifa. Trump, And so that's the thing, is you can't have it both ways. But when you already believe in conspiracy theories, inconsistency, a lot of people think that inconsistency is a bad thing, but when it comes to conspiracy theories, inconsistency is the way that they actually are able to keep hitting people in the amygdala over and over again and get their emotions going. Right?
Yeah.
It's a feature, not a bug. So that's the thing that you have, is that inconsistency is the power behind the MAGA movement, and that inconsistency allows them to hit their emotions in different ways without any consistent message based in fact. But that's a good thing for them, because a lot of these individuals have short memories, or they're ignorant, or they're deliberately obtuse, or they actually maybe have issues. And I think I just think people need to realize that inconsistency is a feature, not a bug, when it comes to actually riling up the emotions of those who are susceptible to conspiracies.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Marjorie Taylor Greene had literally just gotten elected, hadn't she? That was like the start of her term, wasn't
It
it?
certainly
So
was. I mean, you're talking, January 6th was the start of her term that day. And then,
yeah,
on January 17th, she texted that we needed martial law. I mean, she is not a good person, but she's also easily susceptible, but she's also a cynic. And she also knows that the stupider things she says, the more money she makes during fundraising from Republican donors.
yeah, it's so, man, she is like one of those people that, like, yeah, I've compared her to like a pro wrestling villain. It's like she shows up dressed up in these costumes, like she's there to agitate, and I really feel like she's there to muddy the water. Like you said, she knows how to create a hysteria and knows how to rile up a group of people. But the scary part is seeing, it's seeing this work its way into the mainstream, and I talk about that a lot. Is seeing this type of ideology make its way into the mainstream. There was a time that there's always been conspiracy theorists out there, and there's always been kind of an underground of it. But now we're seeing it boil over into the mainstream, and people that we may have once respected or been friends with are falling for it, and that's one of the things that really disturbs me about it.
Oh, man, they've let the crazies out of the basement, man. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, they were always clawing at the door.
yeah,
When and I think they actually cracked the basement door open during the Tea Party days.
yeah,
And especially when it got into birtherism, the birthers with
mhm,
Obama. But really, even with the Tea Party, you had this sort of Christian nationalist religious bent that sort of went over the line. And
mhm,
you saw racism, and you saw the xenophobia starting to creep in, where it was actually being, the scraping at the door of the basement, actually became, they actually cracked open, and now they started to slither through. By the time Trump came along in 2015, I think the conditions were ripe for people to really explode and to actually show people what they were actually thinking. And that should scare the shit out of people, that a lot of these individuals have been hiding this stuff for a long time. So you still have the racism, the xenophobia, but I do think it's the Christian nationalism bent that people need to worry about. Even people that are believers, I think there's a small section you're looking at, like, these Christian nationalists are batshit crazy. And by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene, self-identified Christian nationalist. And so those are the kind of things, I think, from Tea Party to now. I just think you see this craziness that's really festered for a long time that's being released into the wild.
it truly is. And we saw what unfolded on January 6th, and I sat back and say to myself, what have they been planning and what have they been thinking ever since that day as we head into this election? I wonder, do you, I mean, do you honestly think we're going to have an election where, say, Biden gets reelected? Is Trump going to just concede, or are we going to be right back to square one?
Trump
Are
won't
we going?
concede. He already said he won't.
Yeah. So
And he's not going to concede. And
yeah,
even his cats, like JD Vance out there, saying he's not going to concede.
yeah. So we could be headed right back for it again.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
I think the violence will be more directed. I don't think you'll see violence on the Capitol steps this time. But I think you need to look at, for state capitals, you need to look at the homes or the domiciles of individuals, who are trying to go for election and stuff like that. But really, what I'm worried about, and I hope everybody's ready for this, I'm worried about the election workers. I'm worried
yeah,
about the poll watchers. I'm worried about the people working at the vote counting centers. Those are the people I'm worried about, because if you can hit them there at the local areas and you can actually take people out of the game, that could be absolutely devastating. And if you think about this, any disaster that happens in any of these voting centers in any of the counties, anything like that that gets shut down is going to cause chaos. Even if Biden is winning, and say you have voting center in Michigan, one in a swing county that gets, that somehow there's some kind of bomb threats or there's violence, my Lord, you talk about a constitutional crisis, especially if it's a close election, that's what they're
Yeah.
counting on. So look at the 7 states from last year with the alternate electors, but actually look at the swing counties within the states. That's where I'm worried about is the election workers, poll workers, the election center type of individuals. How are those counties going to be targeted? Again, they've learned a lot of lessons from J6. I think they're going to go to the root of the problem instead of the capital this time.
Yeah, and that's one of my biggest fears too. Is I keep telling people this one can't be close. I'm worried about it being a close election. I feel like Biden needs a blowout, for sure. And so that definitely does. There's a lot of. I think we're headed for a lot of chaos. And I don't mean to. I always said in my videos that I'm truly not trying to spread fear and hyperbole. I'm not trying to get people worked up. And you're someone who was there and you studied this and researched it and understand what was there on the ground the day of January 6th. So am I out of line? Am I spreading fear and hyperbole when I'm telling people to beware? Or
in the military, we have this thing that past performance is indicative of future performance.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking at January 6th, and you already have people saying now they're not going to accept the election, and you still have Roger Stone floating out there, you still have Steve Bannon floating out there, you need to be very careful about what's about to happen, and to not be prepared, or to think that listen, to think to somebody like you that they say, oh my gosh, Brandon is talking hyperbole. You're not, because you've already seen it happen. This isn't, you're not bringing it out of the vapor, man. You've seen it, and you have common sense and sanity, and you're smart. So you're like, well, if they had violence on January 6th last time, and they're saying that they're not going to accept the election this time, it's possible, based on what we've seen, that there could be violence next time. It's a simple thing. It's not hyperbole and fear. How about common sense, but also looking at the environment and actually what's happening in the environment and what happened before when they said the exact same things.
Exactly. And, one thing I wanted to talk to you about before we go is the documentary 2000 Mules, because that's been something that so many people I've heard, they've quoted that's been I make a joke that it's every forklift driver in East Tennessee's Bible. It's like it's always where they go. But now it's been debunked, and they've actually came out, the guy that made it came out and said that he apologized for defaming the guy, and it's not going to be even released anymore as a book or a documentary. And, you would think that would maybe wake some people up and say, wait a minute, we fell for something, but I don't necessarily believe they will.
Well, I called it 2000 asses. That's what I called it. And when it first came out, again, I'm sorry about my voice, everybody. I usually don't sound like a cross between Rocky and Bullwinkle and Clint Eastwood. But when it came out, I'm a telephony expert, right? When I was in the National Security Agency and Air Force, I was taught about telephones and to do weird things to track people with them. So when I saw, this 2000 Mules thing, like, well, that's bullshit, right? When you're looking at geofencing, when you're looking at actual geolocations, you can never tell how many people do one thing just based on, whether it's ad tech or you're geofencing or you're taking certain types of signals. So everybody who had a brain and who was trained knew it was crazy. But if you're not trained, you can make it look plausible. So the fact that they're finally coming out, but Dinesh D'Souza comes out and said, nobody debunked it. It was just this one lawsuit. No, you're screwed there, little Dinesh. And I think what you really have is somebody who had to come out with a bunch of shit. It got debunked because technical people knew that 2000 Mules was the worst film ever. And it's so ridiculous. And if anybody comes up, anybody listening to your show, and somebody comes and say, what did you see 2000 Mules? Say, yeah, we saw 2000 asses. And I'll tell you, telephone experts said that was crap. Plus it's been pulled and they're getting sued and you can no longer buy it. So we think we're right. So that's all I got to say to people. Buy them an ice cream, let them wander off, go about your day.
Yeah, that's great. It's so crazy to me, like seeing it. I always tell this story. I know it's kind of comical, but back when I was growing up, I watched pro wrestling and followed it back in the 80s. And I would go to this grocery store with my mom all the time. And every time we went, Mom would let me get one of the old Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines. I can remember when the pages were still black and white. God. And so I would be sitting like in the bottom of the buggy, those big buggies, those shopping carts that kind of had the bottom part you could sit on. I'd put my feet there and sit there and look at the book while I'm riding around as a kid. And every time I would lay that book up on the shelf, every time I would lay it up on the counter, to pay for it, either the bag boy or the cashier would say, that stuff's fake, right? It ain't real. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. I know it's entertainment. I just enjoy watching it. But they would always point it out. And now those same people that used to tell me that's fake when I point out to them 2,000 Mules is fake, they stick to their guns. They stick to it. I'm over here as a kid admitting, hey, I was just watching some entertainment. I was just entertained by it. And you're never going to hear them say that because, like you said earlier, they're going to add another layer to it and dig in their heels harder, even when it's been proven or false,
It's sad. And I do think, though, that the a conspiracy theorists are people who want to follow somebody. A lot of these people just want a daddy, and Trump is their daddy, and they want to
Yeah.
be told what to do. But you got to flip to it. When you look at a conspiracy theorist, it seems like they want to be a hero in their own movie. They think that
Yeah.
somehow, right, that they're in a battle against good and evil, and
Mhm.
Trump is the one who's going to help. But they have their own battle, and they have their own godly way of attacking the evil Democrats and the evil globalists and deep staters that are coming out of them. And this is a war. It's a spiritual warfare. This is a war that I have to fight, and God is on my side. And I'm going to wear the armor of God, right? And
Yeah.
that's what you're saying. And so when you look at 2000 asses and you look at all these individuals that are out there, right? I think what they're looking for is they're looking for acceptance, belonging. Maybe something in their life has fallen short and they need to be a hero in their own movie. And they have really put Trump up on this pedestal, regardless of his faults, because of their own weakness of character. And it's either stupidity, it's ignorance, maybe it's religion, or maybe they're too afraid to get out of their group mentality, right? Because they're surrounded by people who also have these same belief systems, and maybe
Yeah.
they're afraid to rip it out. Give them a safe, and I hate to say this, give them a safe space where they can come out of that crazy. Where, hey,
Mhm.
understand. Try to approach them in a way with a simple question or something easy at first, right? Do you
Yeah.
believe the moon landing was faked? Now, if they say yes, the moon landing was faked, you've already lost. You might as well just buy your Reese's peanut butter cup and leave the store.
Yeah.
But try something easy at first. Try to have some compassionate confrontation.
Mm.
At some point you might have to disengage or tell them they're full of shit. I understand. But I think
Yeah.
at first, try to look at the goodness of those individuals, and maybe you can bring 3 to 5% of the people that you talk to. If not, you know what? Move on, because at that point, there's really not much you can do.
Yeah. It's such a crazy time to be alive, man. It really is. It's like here we are, and I never would have thought we would be having this kind of conversation. Like, if you'd have told me back when I was in high school that this is where we would be in American politics, like Donald Trump would be at the front of it, and he would be this cult of personality, and I just never, I don't know, I never would have thought this was the road we would have went down. But I believe you touched on something earlier when you mentioned the Tea Party. I definitely think that's kind of I've made the joke before that if Neil Young was the godfather of grunge, then that was kind of the godfather of MAGA. It's like it's
That's a way to put it. That's a
yeah,
brilliant way to put it. It's
it's like
perfect. It's
yeah. And
perfect.
I remember like Sarah Palin. There's this moment in time where like you had Sarah Palin run alongside John McCain, and she's one of the first people that I really heard start quoting Alex Jones. She's pulling right from his show, and McCain wouldn't go for that stuff. He wouldn't get in there with her. And it just feels like that somehow Trump got a hold of that act and just ran with it, and but
Oh,
I feel like a lot of it kind of started right in there. And I always go back to the point where McCain took the microphone away from the lady who was trying to say that Obama was a Muslim and she was scared of him. McCain took the microphone away and was like, no, man, we just disagree on politics. We have different ideas, but he's a good man. You don't have to be afraid of him. And I feel like Trump just handed the microphone to those people and cranked up the volume.
I think McCain and to an extent Romney were the last sort of Republicans with some class that were
Yeah.
running. And it's funny. Can you see Trump pulling the microphone away from somebody who said, Obama's a Muslim? He'd actually, you're right,
Yeah.
right? Would have just continued that cycle. And, I think that's, again, I mean, you're making some incredible points. What do we do about it? I don't even know how to stick the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
And I thought, with all my years of training, man, I really thought that I had this ability to turn people. I've been humbled. I mean, it is, and you get to a point, you get so exasperated
Mhm.
that you're like, you know what? You want to give up, but
Yeah.
we can't give up as Americans, man. Can we? I mean, we got to keep going. We got to keep trying to put facts and truth into the ecosystem. And a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't work, Denver. I understand. But man, I think our job as Americans to allow freedom of thought, to follow the First Amendment, but use your First Amendment to go to war on these chuckleheads. And I think that's what, I don't know if that's the most rousing speech. Go to war against the chuckleheads, but
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? Is that we have to do that. right? You have to go to war against the chuckleheads, or the chuckleheads are going to win. And you do not want to be, you don't want to have a chucklehead again as president of the United States.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that said the quote about. And I don't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was something along the lines of that you've got, stupid people are filled with confidence, and you've got smart people who are filled with doubt. I can't remember exactly who said that or how it was worded, but there's times where I say to myself, I'm like, it's heavy, man. It really is. You talk about it every day in and day out. And sometimes you say to yourself, dang, I'm just beating my head against the wall for nothing. But then you have people reach out to you and say, hey, you made sense. You got to keep going. You got to keep bringing these points across because people are listening. And I just feel like that's what we have to do. We just have, like you said, we just have to keep going to war with the chuckleheads and trying to keep our head above water. And,
hashtag chuckleheads. But, the thing is that, the thing that I use, for people now is, you're dealing with people who have arrogance through ignorance.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's an inability of critical thinking right now that I think is really what is metastasized across the United States. It's almost a cancer. And I think the greatest threat right now that we have, a lot of people say it's Donald Trump. Yeah. Okay. You can say that's a threat, or it's the far right, or it's MAGA, or hell, you're going to have some people in the middle say, we got a problem with the far left now, right? There shouldn't be people screaming about intifada. You got all those people. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And I'm not even doing whataboutism, right? Or both sidesism here, because, crazy is not party specific, but we know the Republicans are in a hold my beer moment. Really, that's really what's going on. But I think, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought, when we were going on this, because I got into the chucklehead thing. Jesus, every time now I feel like it's hashtag chuckleheads. I don't even know where I was going right now. But I think that, as we're going down this line, and we're trying to win against this type of sort of this tidal wave of stupid, I do think that stupidity is the greatest threat to the American experiment. And, stupidity really is right in line with evil. And if you're not smart enough to discern when you're being utilized to demonize other people or dehumanize them, it doesn't matter if you're stupid or you're doing it on purpose, it still has the same effect. In the military, we have this saying, whether you get shot on purpose or shot on accident, you're still getting shot. So when I talk to people about these type of things, you can say, well, he's well-meaning, but he's a dumbass.
Yeah.
Well, if he's stupid, he can still be hurting the American Republic based on the fact that he can't discern right from wrong. There's still an issue there. So again, stupidity to me is the thing that I fear the most. And it feels like ignorance is really the new virus that's sort of consuming the United States today.
Yeah, and it's so sad to me to see a major political party cater to those people, and I feel like the reason they do it is because they realize those people are easily manipulated and easily led. They love to call us the sheep and the snowflakes, but I really feel like they're the ones that are the most easily led. And so I don't think that the powers that be really mind their stupidity. I think they're using their stupidity to their advantage, and that's pretty scary.
Oh man, stupid people are great for authoritarians.
Yeah,
Let's be honest, and definitely, for fascists. And listen, smart people fall for this too. Don't get me wrong, because they have some kind of financial gain there. But a stupid dollar spends the same as a smart dollar. A stupid vote counts just as much as a smart vote. So, when people are like, oh, there's a million stupid people. Well, let me tell you what. If there's 10 people, that are fairly weak in a bar fight against you as one person, you're going to lose to those 10 weak people. I'm telling you right now.
exactly.
So, right, I tell you, I know it's hard to believe with my incredible physique, Brandon, but I was a bouncer at one time, and now that I'm 54, be like, yeah, right, then I was a badass, glory days. But if there's 4 people and me as a bouncer, and I could take care of myself, I had to talk my way out of that or wait for backup. So, right. Because you can think you're the baddest ass and the toughest guy in the world, but if you get overwhelmed, you're going to get kicked. You're done.
Exactly.
And I think people need to understand that if you have really 5 smart people standing there and you got 100 people from the moron army at a school board meeting, you're going to get overwhelmed. So I think the smart and the sane need to stick together. And I hope that they can.
That's a really great point, man. I've never heard it put that way, but that's brilliant. That really is because it's just so true. You know, I never was the bouncer. I was a musician playing, but I have saw bouncers need backup a couple of
Well,
times.
you actually have talent, man. I didn't have any.
Well,
Of that. I don't have any of that, man. Come on, you can. I'm not. I
yeah,
should have been a lead singer. Like a David Lee
yeah,
Roth or something.
I appreciate it. But before we go, man, let everyone know where they can hear you, your podcast, and
Oh shoot,
where
yeah.
they can find Denver at.
Yeah, so I got the Coalition of Sane podcast on Spotify, Apple, and where you can find podcasts. Rep Riggleman is my Twitter handle or X handle. I'm on Threads as Denver Riggleman, but also the Midas Touch gave me a great platform. I do the major interviews on the Midas Touch platform, and then on the COTS I do the COTS takes or some minor interviews and stuff like that. So just getting
Yeah.
started. That's why I appreciate you. I mean you're really helping me out here. Just trying to be a good sport and stuff, but my whole background really was, I have a lot of followers on X and things like that. And I'm on news a lot. I'm on media a lot, but doing this on your own, getting out there and doing this is really a challenge. And you've really been able to prepare, but also been able to succeed. And I really appreciate that. And thanks for having me on. I love talking about this. This is my bailiwick is conspiracy theories and what happened on January 6th and politics and also tech. And that's the kind of stuff that I do. But man, you really have a good way of putting it out there, and I think you need to continue, man. Don't stop. Just keep swinging that bat, brother.
I really, I really appreciate it, man, and I appreciate you coming on because I've been sitting here doing videos by myself, talking about these things, and it's like I needed to bring it some backup, because sometimes
Man, I'm always here for you. Hey,
yeah,
you know what I want to do, Brent? If they ever drag an alien out of Area 51, that'd be a great conversation for me. Because if you want to talk UFO alien conspiracy theories, Bigfoot conspiracy theories, you want to talk about all the QAnon, where we go one, we go all, the storm.
yeah,
If you want to talk about all that stuff, the adrenochrome conspiracy theories, or 9/11 truther, or all that stuff, or flat Earth conspiracy theories, or hollow Earth conspiracy theories, and that's my thing. So,
yeah.
I love looking and exploring the crazy that's out there. And the sad part is that the crazy is starting to take us over a little bit. And, that's where we need to get to work, I think.
It is. When I toured playing music, I made it out to Roswell, New Mexico, and walked around the town in Roswell. And I came back home, and people said, "What was it like?" And I know this may be a funny comparison, but I said, "Back here at home, we have a place called Pigeon Forge, which is where Dollywood's at, in Gatlinburg, Tennessee."
I've been there many times. Oh yeah.
My mom said, "What was Roswell like?" I said, "It was kind of like Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge with alien heads." It's like everywhere I went, there was like an alien doorknob and alien
That
street.
whole aliens, Loch Ness monsters, and Bigfoot's all about money and grift, man. The Bigfoot communities are tens of millions of dollars. So is the alien community with the amount of money in it. So most of these people are grifters, and they're actually making tons of money.
Oh yeah,
Really going after people who believe this nonsense, and that's really what it's all about, guys. It's about money. Go back to money and power, and that's always where it lays.
yeah. I mean, they realize there's an audience for it, and people will buy it, so they're going to sell it to them. I mean,
Yeah,
they're like they're born
hell,
every day.
if people want to buy unicorn turds, sell them unicorn turds, right? That's really what it comes down to, man.
It really does, man. Well, again, I really appreciate you so much for coming on, guys. Go follow Denver and check out his podcast. Go read the book, The Breach, and yeah, man, come back anytime and talk more about it with me.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me. It was an incredible pleasure.
All right, we'll see y'all next week. Thank you.